I want to bring Ryan in. I can't wait to meet this guy.
Ryan's awesome.
This guy.
You're gonna have a joy.
There he is.
How are you?
Ryan Tansom.
Congratulations, Ali. Here we are, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, here we are. I'm honored that you're joining us first. Ryan has a tremendous affinity for entrepreneurs. He is an entrepreneur. He's been through an exit, and he's got tremendous wisdom and knowledge for entrepreneurs that are looking at that pathway or that roadmap to exiting their business and the life after. And Ryan, please give us a quick intro to you.
So I was listening, and it's been 8 years since we sold our business, and every day I hear more and more things about I wish I would have known. And your book, it's 8 years, a little too shy, man. I climbed right up that mountaintop and thought it was a cliff and had no parachute, and so I went through all the things that you went through, or you're describing here, and so many parts of your book, and the way that you're framing up the concepts to think differently, I think are huge, man. Because the only way to start acting is thinking differently first, and you're making it easy, and I love it.
Thank you, Ryan. What was the first thing that struck you in the new framework, or kind of the new way of thinking about it?
There's so many things, because one is the control, like the risk and the control, man. Like when you show like, hey, we think we can have like so much control over this huge risky machine that kicks out some money, hopefully. And yet we think about risk as stocks completely different. Yet, so how you laid out the control and the opportunity risk and the reinvesting dilemma. I mean, it's so interesting because our business was doing 20 million and had 115 employees. So no small machine, and it's not liquid. And so you talk a lot about that. So you don't really think about it as wealth. You know what I mean? Like we didn't have a pot to piss. We didn't have a pot to piss in, man. Like we didn't have a Schwab account. We wouldn't have had the assets under management to work with you until we sold. And it was just interesting. So we never thought about ourselves as wealthy. It was just all about like, how do we continue to grow this business? So trying to think about yourself and the wealth paradigm, like, hey, this is wealthy, and like this is wealth, and how do we want to treat it, and how does our life fit into it? Because you're so commingled. I just think separating that is like I said, the first way to start thinking about when you start thinking about it, then you can do something about it. Until we didn't know how to think about it until afterwards. It was like went from this huge machine to a TD Ameritrade account that you can't really do a whole lot with.
Yeah, it changes the whole paradigm overnight. And it's almost as though it's an entirely new journey, because I see so many business owners. I'll give an example of like a specific one. I had this one business owner had a manufacturing company, and he had sold his company, and he had a huge liquidity event that happened, and this now turned into cash. And he goes, now that I've earned this money, I can't see it fluctuate at all. I don't want to ever see it lose $1 because I worked so hard for it. And I'm thinking in my head, he was in the oil and gas industry. I was like, if he knew if his company traded like a stock, what it looked like the last 20 years that he built it, it would be wild, crazy gyrations of up, but he just never saw it on a screen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So for him, converting that business success into personal wealth on his balance sheet, he almost had an entirely new learning curve of thinking about this, because for all these years he had viewed it as, this is not risky because I control it. And in reality, it was quite a different situation. And
how you bucket, Ali, the different wealth categories and different risks that come with it. Like there was a story that I told you, it wasn't in your book, but I think you have a lot of examples that kind of are similar to this, is that someone in the Olympics, if they're on the balance beam, I can't do all these flips and everything like that and land, 98% of the time on my feet after flipping off a balance beam. But that person does that all the time. So their level of accomplishment is 98% of the time. But as a business owner, I'm essentially doing all those flips. We had a copy or managed IT business. So those flips were related to our industry. But then all of a sudden, when you shift it to a different practice, like you talk about, we're like, we didn't have the Midas touch with, REITs or real estate investing or stocks and bonds. We did for copiers and IT services. So it was just understanding the opportunity and our level of skill and awareness as related to our business compared to other things. This happened to my dad and I know you mentioned it in your book, where all of a sudden you sell and everybody comes out of the woodworks and wants to be your friend and wants an investment. And so we had no framework to say, hey, we should invest in real estate or like startups in California, or maybe like, put it in with a wealth manager. So we didn't have any kind of like direction. And so like it's almost like you think you could do you're always doing those flips perfectly, but you realize that you're no longer on the balance beam. You're, doing a different game.
Yeah.
And you haven't been able to shift and understand the risk associated with what you're doing after the fact.
So what did you do? How did you handle it?
We made a lot of really bad decisions. That's we did a bunch of residential, a lot of residential investing. We did some REITs. We invested in some hotels, some startups. I started my business. So it took a long time to figure out, hey, like this is different. And we need to understand, like going back into your different 6 components, like what's the cash flow needs versus and the liquidity that comes from the assets. So having this understanding of liquidity, wealth, and understanding your cash flow needs is huge. And then kind of stacking on the risk that you're taking. Like, you lay it all great, man. Like I said, your book's a couple of years. I could add a couple of zeros if I would have invested in the book a handful of years ago.
Well, I appreciate that. And hopefully for the next Ryan Tansom that might be selling their company, next year or the year after, I think that's the goal. And what I mentioned about coming down the mountain, so many, I've just seen it so many times, and I know you have as well. And I'd love for you to share if you have a story that where an owner really struggled with post-exit, because I think this is one of those areas we share a passion in this particular area. And I don't think, no matter how much I tell business owners this, maybe if they read the book, it goes a bit deeper and it kind of the immersive experience tells the story even better, but they underestimate the impact of preparing for the life after. And the way, in the spirit of the mountain climbing analogy I gave earlier, it's like they're telling me, Ali, when I climb to the top of the mountain and I reach the summit, then when I get there, I'm going to spend a month or two to think about how I'm going to get down.
Yeah, if you don't need to bring any of your gear, if you've got a shovel and a coffin and you put the coffin and the shovel at the top of the, like, hey, game over. It sounds good if that's your plan. Like dying in the corner office, like that's always a strategy, not optimal. But I mean, man, you hit the nail on the head. And so I've got a podcast. I've got almost 300 interviews completed now, and like not just dozens, but like hundreds of people that have come on the show. And it used to be called Life After Business. Now it's called Intentional Growth. But you and I are like lockstep, because people that had a big entity and tens of thousands of employees, for an example, and then they liquidate, and then they've got a TD Ameritrade account with $100 million and no infrastructure to make the impact that they had been for 10, 20 years. I mean, literally hundreds of interviews where they're like, I'm miserable. I'm trying to then reinvest and buy a company to get the impact that I wish I would have known I wanted after the fact. Doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, but it's just like you lay out understanding that. Cause like you said, entrepreneurs don't retire, man. Like, and I would argue that most people don't, because it's in our DNA to have purpose and growth to like better understand ourselves. So like that whole thing when I don't know, there's like 4 Venn diagrams all intersect where you talk, I don't know what the word.
The Ikigai concept. Yeah. That's really easy to pronounce, by the way.
Yeah. I thought it was a boggle, like one of the boggle exercises. You're supposed to figure out what the word was. But my point is, it's very difficult if you can't go back. Like when you sell your business, you can't go back and then get your coworkers again and get the community again and get the infrastructure and the vendors and suppliers. So understanding where you fit in like the relationship and like the ongoing legacy you want with that, like you mentioned, is crucial to make the decision, because you can liquidate your asset like an ESOP and keep running your company. You know what I mean? It's like people like understand, like you can liquidate this asset and keep running it, or you can, pass on your role and keep it. But your framework can help people make those decisions without figuring it out after the fact that there is no reset button.
You need Ryan in your back pocket everywhere you go. This guy's awesome.
Ryan's he gets it so well. When he and I first connected, when we were introduced, it was about 5 minutes into the conversation, and we were both like, "Did we just become best friends?" Because we saw. I meet a lot of people that do the type of work that relates to M&A or preparing companies for exit or outsource CFOs. I don't meet a lot of Ryans. Ryan's got kind of a very unique approach to providing that type of strategic financial guidance for business owners that are, nearing an exit in the next few years. If you hear his podcast episodes on intentional growth, you'll see the incredible work that he does. But that's just, it's a rare find. So we've naturally, cross-pollinated with clients and collaborated on different things and done some joint speeches. So Ryan, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your
good luck, man. And I want everybody to pick it up because it's a how-to, right? How to think about this stuff. It all starts with thinking differently. Then you create the anxiety of like, you got to do something about it. Because if you don't know it, then you're not going to do anything about it. But you've planted this seed that people can't ignore.
Yes. I love that. That's a great endorsement line. Okay. My marketing line.
We're going to capture that. You planted the seed that people can't ignore.
Oh, yeah.
So Ryan, when we do the reprint, when we do the next print copy of this, so on our website, we're putting that down along with.
I like it. It's something that resonated. I like it.
Yeah.
Several things.
Ryan, I know that the team is putting your contact information and the link to the podcast in the chat comments. So feel free to come back and engage with people there. It was really great to be connected with you here.
Thanks for having me, Ollie, and good luck, man. And everybody, I pick up the book. It's awesome.